Hello everyone and welcome to a new Infinity Kingdom video. This is Kincaid from M14, and last week I saw a hot topic in Discord. They were talking about the best damage dealer. I think there was someone comparing between Genghis Khan and Himiko. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about the perks and cons about using both immortals, the element advantage and the skill advantage, how to counter them. Not exactly how to counter them, but the skills that counter these two immortals. So you can keep in mind when exactly not to engage in battle if there's someone that is stronger than you to avoid feeding owner. So let's get into it. I would like to start with the element advantage because this is something very important and this is something that you need to keep in mind. I explained it in a lot of my old videos and I talked about it plenty of times. However, let's talk about it and mention it very quickly in this video. So the element advantage is as follows. This is the element advantage and this is how it works exactly. Well, basically the light counters the shadow counters all the normal elements, and then found fire counters wind counters lightning to earth to water to fire. But how does it exactly work? Basically and simply, the light here deals 25% more damage to the shadow immortals, and then or the shadow elements immortals and dragons deal 25% increased damage to all the regular elements, and so on. So basically the fire deals 25% more damage to wind, and then it keeps going. This is an example of how exactly does it work. You see my shadow dragon in the open arena here deals a fixed damage, a fixed true damage. That means that this damage is not being affected by the physical defense, the magical defense, or anything or any skill that reduces damage. The true damage is being applied as it is. It's not being affected by any skills or any defensive that reduces damage. So it deals a fixed amount of 2.2 million true damage to one random enemy unit. And in this case here, you see my dragon did more than 2.2 million true damage because the element or the immortal that received the damage here is an earth immortal. That means that my Melanthius or my shadow dragon will apply 25% increased damage. So this is how it looks like. Not exactly 25%. It should be 25% as I tried before. Maybe they reduced it to 20%. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't test for a very long time. But how does it look exactly to for the shadow dragon to apply to a normal element? So I think it was this report. Yeah, this is how it should be usually, because in this fight here it was Elizabeth who took the dragon's damage, and since Elizabeth is a shadow element immortal, that means that she will not get the increased damage of 25%, so the damage will be applied as it is. This is just the example. So for example, if a fire immortal is facing a wind immortal and he's supposed to deal 1 million damage, that means that this 1 million damage will be increased to 1.25 million damage. Hopefully this was clear, because this is how we're gonna explain the damage dealing of Himiko and Genghis Khan. Let's start with the ultimate skill, since this is mainly the main comparison chart here. So Himiko's ultimate skill deals a fixed a damage of 450% to all units, and she has an energy regain of 81. So she's pretty similar to Genghis Khan in this area, because Genghis Khan deals 500% damage at max level, and his energy regain is a bit higher. My Genghis Khan is very low right now. His boost 0. So if we look at a fully developed Genghis Khan, you can see that his energy regain is at 86. Is it 86 for all the Genkeys? I want to see another Genkeys. Let's see if there is anyone here. Yeah, this is a very low boost Genkeys. This is, I believe, a boost 0 Genkeys as well. But anyway, Genkeys can have a bit higher energy regain and a bit higher damage. However, Himiko is a Shadow Immortal, which means that she will apply increased damage of 25% to all the regular elements. That means that if you're up against fire, wind, water, earth, or even lightning, that damage, the 450% damage will be increased by 25%. So this is a simple math. So if we do this, this is Himiko's damage against regular elements. However, if she is up against a shadow element march or a holy march, this damage will be back to 450%. However, for Jenkins, he's only gonna be dealing increased damage to earth elements. So if he's up against a full earth march, he will shine even more than Himiko because his damage then will be around 600 25% damage or 112% damage instead of 500. Hopefully this was clear as well, because we're gonna continue. And uh, uh, for Himiko, she got an additional something very annoying to deal with, which is the exile, the control that is being applied by the demon ambush. So Himiko exiles or controls the highest troop immortal in the back line if he was not immune to control, and she exiled him for 6 seconds, uh, gain unable to gain energy, do normal attacks, or cast skills. So that means that this immortal will be completely useless for 6 seconds. However, during this time, this immortal will not receive any kind of damage. So this is kinda a give and take situation, because if the immortal is safe, if it's, for example, if you managed somehow to exile an immortal such as Apollo, that means that he will be safe from damage. So when he gets out of the exile, he will one shot your march. That is true. However, you still survived for 6 seconds. Anyway, as for Jenkins, the exclusive effect or the unique effect for his ultimate skill is the wounds that he applies to the enemy team. This is something extremely important because along with Jenkins, you can still use an immortal such as Matilda because you don't need the wounds from Ken Emperor anymore. This is also something that is in favor of Jenkins. He applies wounds already, so he doesn't need Ken Emperor to apply more wounds. So if you use an immortal such as Matilda alongside with Jenkins, that means that he will get increased energy gain and increased damage to his ultimate skill thanks to Matilda's buff. However, in Himiko's situation, if you use Matilda, you will lose the wounds from Ken Emperor. Maybe Matilda is better. I'm still trying out with Matilda. I haven't maxed her yet. I don't have enough shards, but I will give it a try to use it alongside Himiko in the future and see how it goes. So Himiko got the exile for 6 seconds and Jenkins got the wounds. And that's it for the ultimate skill comparison. Now, the dragon used alongside these two immortals could make a lot of difference, and this is something that I also mentioned in Discord. That if you use a lightning dragon along with Jenkins, is gonna make him extremely OP. Because if you look at the lightning dragon buffs, so this buff is kinda exclusive to the lightning elements. The crit value and the dodge value applies to all the immortals in the marsh. However, the last buff is exclusive. It is only applying to the lightning immortals. So this buff is for each debuff cast on the enemy team by your immortals. All your lightning immortals gets 3% damage up to 5 stacks. That means that it is up to 15% damage. So Jenkins alone, once he casts his ultimate skill, he applies 4 debuffs, which is the wounds, to 4 different units in the marsh. So if Jenkins casts his ultimate skill, he will get immediately 12% increased damage. And this is actually very, very huge because Himiko is one of the immortals that is kind of lacking this buff because most of the players that is playing Himiko, they use an Earth Dragon, and the Earth Dragon is kind of make it hard for Himiko to deal damage because the Earth Dragon's buff is only applying to Earth elements as well. So you see here for your Earth Immortals, for every 10% troops lost, you get up to 5 stacks, increased 4% damage. That means is up to 20%. However, Himiko is not getting anything from this skill at all because she is a shadow element unit. And as for Jenkins, if you used a lightning dragon, you get up to 15% damage increase. So this is also something that you need to keep in mind. If you're gonna use Jenkins, make sure you have a lightning dragon, alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is something that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna use Jenkins. Make sure you have a lightning dragon alongside with Jenkins. So this is someth along with him. I've seen a lot of players using Jinkies in server 38 and lost KVK, and I played against most of them. I've struggled a lot against most of them because they were using Jinkies alongside a Lightning Dragon, and Jinkies used to deal a lot of damage. Also, one more thing, that my Marsh is built of two Earth unit immortals, which is Charles, I'm sorry, and Yi Sun Chen. So this is also something to keep in mind if you're up against Earth units. That means that Jinkies will deal a lot of damage. One thing I forgot to mention is the exclusive artifacts. They are pretty much similar, not a lot to talk about. Himiko's exclusive artifact increases her ultimate skill damage by 30%. So instead of the 450% damage applied by the ultimate skill, it is increased by 30%, which means with a simple math, I think, yeah, this is how Himiko's ultimate skill damage looks like with the exclusive artifact. So as for Genkiz, he gets the same effect if I'm not mistaken. He gets another 25% or 30%, I think. Yeah, 30%. So Genkiz gets an additional 150% damage increase on his ultimate skill. So instead of the 500% he deals 650% damage using his ultimate skill if you have the right artifact for him. So I would like to make a comparison between the full damage being applied from Himiko to normal units, the regular element units, and from Jinkies to the Earth units. So with both immortals at full power. However, I would like to talk about the specializations first. I know my thoughts is all around the place. I didn't really prepare for this video, but I just wanted to make the comparison kind of quickly. So for the specializations available for both immortals, they're pretty much the same, I think. The Storm Ice spell, this one increases the crit rate by 25%, increases your magical damage, all the damage being dealt by the immortal by 55%. And the corrupting wave also increases the ultimate skill damage by up to 65% at max level. It also increases the resilience by 25%. Abyssal Inferno deals a fixed amount of damage every 9 seconds, up to 400% damage, and I believe this is pretty much the same for Genkiz. Yes, concentration stance increases the ultimate skill damage by 65% and increases the accuracy instead of resilience for Himiko by 25%. Deadly aim increases the crit rate. This one increases it by 30%. Himiko only gets 25% at max level. However, ranged immortals gets 30%. This is actually huge. I just noticed this right now. I thought they are pretty much the same. However, the physical damage increases also 50%. Does Himiko gets a 50% as well? Now Himiko gets a 55%. So the damage is more on the mages, the crit is less, which kind of makes no sense because mages should be dealing more crit damage or should rely more on crits. However, the crit rate is more on the ranged immortals. As for the Stellar Rain, it is pretty much the same, deals a physical fixed damage every 9 seconds for 400% up to 400% damage. It has a chance to trigger of 70%. So for Jinkies, if you're relying on crits or if you're planning to use a skill such as Time to Shine, then Deadly Aim will be your skill to go for. If you do not have Time to Shine or if you do not want to build a crit Jinkies count, then you definitely have to play the concentration stance. For Himiko, I believe you have only one option, which is relying on crits, since you have an artifact that could increase your crit rate by 25%. So I believe the best spec that you can choose for Himiko is the Storm Ice spell. And as for Jankiz, there is no main stat that could increase his crit rate on the artifact. Unfortunately, since he's a ranged immortal, all he can get, you can choose between accuracy and physical damage increase. And I think physical damage increase is the way to go for all the ranged immortals. Right, so for the damage for let's start with Jinkies. So Jinkies gets a fixed damage of 500% and he gets another 30% from his exclusive artifact. That means another 150%. If you're up against let's see, if you're up against uh Earth unit, that means you get an additional 25% damage. That is around 125%. So he gets a total of 775% damage increase. And of course, there is the 15% damage that you get from the dragon. No, I think I did something wrong. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is it. So Genghis Khan damage is up to 80, 50% with all the boosts available for him. And these boosts includes the dragon's buff, the lightning dragon's buff, the third skill, and the exclusive artifact is buff, which is the 30% damage increase on his ultimate skill, and uh, what else? The unit counter buff, which is another 25%. So Denkies could deal up to 85% damage. However, this is only limited to the Earth units. If it's against any other units, then he loses 25%, which is that one 25%, and his damage will be reduced to 725%. So this is the amount of damage Genkiz deals with his ultimate skill against units that he does not counter, and this includes the shadow units, fire units, wind units, and water units, and another other lightning units as well. As for Himiko deals a fixed damage of 450%. This is increased by uh, 135% against any units except for the Holy, since she is a Shadow Immortal that counters all the regular elements. So this damage will be applied to all the units except for Holy and Shadow, which is similar to Himiko. And there is another 30%. Now, this is the 30% being applied by the artifact. So as for yeah, so this is the damage. This is the total damage applied by Himiko to all the units, to all the regular units, which is fire, shadow, fire. I'm sorry, fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind. So this is the damage being applied by Himiko to all these units, and these boosts include the exclusive artifact effect and the unit counter effect. So let's just say that you have a shadow dragon, a max shadow dragon, and you can use it along with Himiko. So with the shadow dragon you get another 15% on this damage, and this is gonna be, hopefully my math helps me calculating this. Yeah, okay, so it was 6, 7, the other way around. Yeah, so if you have a shadow dragon, Himiko with her ultimate skill deals 760% to all units. In my opinion, there is a lot to choose from here, and this is kind of confusing. So let's go over what we have right now. For Himiko, you're kind of limited to the immortals that you can use because you need to use wounds, and I think wounds is one of the most important things that you can use on IK right now. So you're kind of have to use an immortal such as Kin Emperor, and you have a kind of slower energy regain. You have 81 energy regain compared to Jankizi's up to 87. And your skill deals exile. It is kind of useless against someone who's using Fighting Master. So this skill is not gonna make use of it all the time. Or if you're up against running up against someone with Fu Fei, and you're gonna deal a damage of 760%. You're gonna deal increased damage to all the regular units, include uh, except for the Shadow Unholy. As for Jenkins, you don't need wounds. You can use an immortal such as Matilda alongside him. You're gonna increase his damage even further, increase his injury regain and even further. His damage is a bit more. You're gonna deal around 80, 160% to Earth units and about 650% to 750% to the all the regular units, includes Shadow. And his energy regain is a bit faster. However, he's gonna deal less crits since he doesn't have an exclusive artifact that deals increased. He increases his crit rate. Okay, so I think for me, if I wanted to choose either of one, two immortals, I think I would go with Himiko, and I'm gonna explain why in a second. Actually, I don't know why. I like Himiko. This is actually me being based or having a biased opinion. I like Himiko, to be honest. She deals a lot of a lot of damage to the regular units, which is most of the players are using nowadays because it is so hard to build either Shadow or Holy. It's very expensive. That of course we're not gonna talk about the Case Immortals. So one last thing, last thing I wanted to talk about, which is the skills uh, to keep in mind whenever you're using either Himiko or Genghis Khan. So one skill that they have to fear in common is which is the Malice skill, because both immortals can count on the crit rate and the critical damage. So if you're up against Malice, that could be a problem. As for Genghis, you need to keep in mind on people who are using a skill such as Oaken Guard, because it is kind of very annoying. And if you're using Himiko, you kind of need to keep your eye on a skill such as Resist. Also very annoying because Himiko deals could deal a lot of damage in the early fight. One skill you have to use in both immortals if you're using one of them is the Fighting Master. Fighting Master is also very important. I think I explained enough how it works. However, it makes you immune to control. Is very helpful against Himiko, and very useful on your damage dealer if you're using a damage dealer in the back row. I think this is everything I needed to mention. I'm sorry my thoughts were all over the place. Not sure if we're gonna follow up all the information that I just mentioned in this video, but hopefully it works. Make sure to keep notes because I know you're gonna forget most of the info. I even forget most of the info I mentioned in this video. However, this is it for this one. Hopefully it was useful. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and have a wonderful day.